While major motion pictures might not be filming with smartphones, having a video camera that fits in your pocket gives budding cinematographers a chance to get excited about shooting video. Even if it isn't the primary reason you bought your phone, letting a perfectly good camera sit in your pocket is a travesty when you could be shooting great video today. In this training video, we show you how to get better video with your smartphone, including mistakes to avoid and tips on framing, stabilization, exposure and focus, lighting, audio, and accessories. Whether you're just getting to know the video features of a new phone or you're a seasoned veteran, knowing some ground rules for shooting with a smartphone can get you vastly improved results without breaking the bank. Before we dive into some standard shooting fundamentals, we need to address the two most common mistakes people make when shooting with their smartphone: shooting orientation and zooming. The first thing you want to do is make sure to hold your phone in a horizontal position. While still photos might work either way, traditional video is always shot in landscape. The second thing you want to avoid is using the zoom control. This will artificially enlarge your footage, and the result is a pixelated image with reduced clarity. If you need a closer shot, the best option is to physically move closer to your subject. While smartphones have their own set of strengths and weaknesses, certain shooting fundamentals remain the same no matter what camera you're shooting with. One secret to getting great footage is proper framing. A key element to understand how to achieve proper framing is known as the rule of thirds. Imagine your shot divided into thirds both vertically and horizontally. Apps like Camera Awesome for iOS and Android have the option to superimpose these lines right on your screen. Don't worry, they won't be on the recording. The dividing lines intersect at 4 points. For visually pleasing composition, horizontal and vertical elements within the scene should closely follow the horizontal and vertical lines, with key elements placed at or near the points of intersection. The rule of thirds is also the foundation for framing your shot with proper headroom and lead room. Headroom refers to the space between the top of your subject's head and the top of the frame. In this scene, the person's head is too close to the top of the frame, which gives it a claustrophobic feeling. Any upward movement will cause our subject's head to touch or extend beyond the top of the frame. Conversely, it's also possible to have too much headroom. In this scene, there's an inordinate amount of room or dead space between the top of the subject's head and the frame. This can cause them to appear small, isolated, and insignificant, and can leave the audience confused or distracted by other elements within the scene. When framing people, the primary area of focus should be their eyes. Keep the eyes on the upper line of thirds, preferably at or near a point of intersection. Let's take a look at a few examples. In this close-up, we've placed the subject's eyes on the upper line, and even though the top of the head gets cut off, the framing looks good. Moving out to a medium shot, we still have our eyes placed near the upper line. Notice how we included a portion of the subject's shoulders. The same shot, framed without including the shoulders, makes it look as if our subject's head is floating in the frame. Another thing you definitely want to avoid is cutting off your subject's chin. This example clearly demonstrates the awkward feeling that this gives the viewer. Lead room refers to the space in front of the subject in the direction they are facing or in which the action is moving. In this scene, the subject is framed properly according to the rule of thirds, but there's too little lead room. The subject feels cramped and claustrophobic. Not enough lead room cuts off the energy to the front and is unsettling to the audience. Here's the same shot with proper lead room. Notice how there's ample space in the direction that the action is moving. Of course, human beings are not the only things that benefit from having the right amount of lead room. Moving objects such as a rolling ball or a moving car should have plenty of lead room in the direction in which they are traveling. Even still objects such as a tree may give more weight to one direction or another. If so, provide lead room in that direction. Another common application for the rule of thirds is placing the horizon in your shot. Whether it's a sunset or a mountain range, you should place the horizon on the upper or lower line in the grid to get a well-composed shot. You definitely should avoid placing the horizon dead center. So, now that you know a little bit about composing good shots, let's talk about keeping those shots steady. Because of the form factor and weight of your phone, It's impossible to get a shot without the phone moving on both the horizontal and vertical axes. Sure, in a pinch you can just pull your phone out of your pocket and start shooting, but this typically results in some pretty shaky footage. Ideally, you'll have some type of basic stabilizer, but if you don't, you can minimize shaky camera movement by leveraging your body. Instead of holding your arms out with your elbows free, try resting your elbows against your body for a more stable shot. Leaning against a wall or object can also help you steady the shot. In some situations, you may even be able to rest the phone on a flat surface for a completely steady shot. The fact that your phone is so much lighter than a traditional camera can be an advantage. Using a bit of gaffer's tape, which is a special type of tape used extensively in video production, you can try mounting it in a variety of locations. This not only keeps the phone stable, but also offers some unique camera angles. If you already have some stabilizers for a different camera, such as a tripod, you can get an accessory for your phone that has a standard 1/4-20 mount. A 1/4-20 mount is an industry standard size that will allow you to mount your phone to just about any support accessory to get rock solid shots. You can even mount it to a jib and get shots like this. So, you know how to frame a decent shot, and you've got some options for keeping those shots more stable. Now we need to assert more control over our image using camera controls. Using the right apps, there are typically two things you should try to control to get the image you want: exposure and focus. Exposure controls how bright your image is and helps prevent your shot from being underexposed or overexposed. An underexposed image will appear too dark, with the darkest areas of the shot becoming pure black with no detail. An overexposed image will appear too bright, with the brightest areas of the shot becoming pure white with no detail. Focus controls the point in your scene that will look perceptibly sharp, with other areas potentially being blurry. If you fire up the built-in video app for most phones, it's typically going to be auto everything. If you've ever tried to shoot inside with a bright window in the background, you've likely been frustrated that your subject looks like they're in the witness protection program. Let's talk about options to gain more control. In the case of the iPhone, touching a point on the screen will use that point as a reference for determining the exposure and focus, and holding your finger on the point will lock that point in. So changing the shot won't cause the focus or exposure to shift. This is a good first step, but eventually you're going to want to set your exposure and focus separately. While many apps allow you to choose two separate points to determine autofocus and auto exposure, an important feature to look for is the ability to also lock each point separately. Apps like Camera Awesome for Android or Camera Pro for the iPhone have this feature. This will give you complete control to set and lock exposure and focus, which will prevent the automatic features from altering your shot once you've set it up. Let's talk about some common issues with exposure. When you set your exposure on your smartphone, it automatically adjusts ISO and shutter settings to get the best image possible. While you don't need to understand ISO and shutter speed, you do need to be aware of a couple of things that are likely to happen. In a very bright scene, your phone will use a faster shutter, which will cause fast motion in your shot to appear a bit stuttery. In a dark scene, your phone will use a higher ISO and a slower shutter speed, which can cause your footage to have unwanted noise in it. When it comes to focusing, simply select the point you want to be sharp. If you're looking to get a nice soft background and a crisp foreground, your best bet is to put as much distance between the two as you can and get as close to the foreground object as possible. Now let's take a look at an example of how these functions work. Here's our shot on automatic. While our bright background is sharp and has a decent exposure, our intention is to have our little mushroom in focus and properly exposed. We can get the exposure we want by dragging the icon to the mushroom or maybe even a part of the table. Once we get the look we want, we make sure it's locked in. Our background ends up overexposed, but that's preferable to underexposing our mushroom. Now we can drag the focus icon onto our mushroom and make sure it's locked. Notice that we've got a nice soft background because we're so close to the mushroom, and the background has a lot of separation from it. This effect is known as shallow depth of field. So, we've gained some control over our focus and exposure. Now let's talk about lighting. Even if you're not using a professional lighting setup, you'll still want to try and control the natural lighting in your scene because it has a lot to do with your final result. When it comes to lighting conditions, there are two things smartphones aren't very good at: shooting scenes with high contrast or low light. High contrast means that very bright and very dark areas occur within the frame of your shot. Getting back to our mushroom shot, the bright background and shaded foreground make it difficult to attain proper exposure for the entire shot. Either the dark areas will lose detail and become completely black, or the bright areas will lose detail and become completely white. There are a couple of ways to combat this. The easiest option is to try and frame your shot to eliminate high contrast areas. If you're outside, this might mean making sure your entire scene is either in the sun, like this example, or in the shade, like this one. Also, you should avoid shooting in direct sun at midday. Having the sun directly overhead gives harsh shadows on your subject, while shooting in the early or late hours of the day provides softer lighting. If you need to shoot midday, one relatively affordable accessory you can get is a 5-in-1 reflector. This will allow you to bounce light like the sun back onto your subject to help fill in the dark shadows. In a pinch, you can also use a piece of white foam core board to achieve a similar effect. If you're indoors, try avoiding shots with windows in the background, as the outside light is sure to overpower the indoor light. If you're attempting to shoot indoors with existing light, make sure all the lights are on and at full brightness if they're on a dimming system. Without enough light, you might get an image, but it's likely to have a lot of noise in it. Some video apps will allow you to keep the flash bulb on while shooting, which can help a little if your shot is too dark. Basically, the rule of thumb here is that the more light you have, the less likely you're going to end up with footage that's noisy. With all these video settings and techniques, it's easy for audio to get lost in the shuffle. But in reality, people will tune out bad audio with good video a lot faster than bad video with pristine audio. To get better audio on your phone, the best solution is to use an external microphone. If you're just recording audio, the Rode SmartLav is a great choice, and it even comes with a free app. This allows you to control the audio level manually to get good results. Unfortunately, that manual gain control can't function if you're using a camera app. If you need audio and video at the same time, a better option is something like the iRig Pre. This has a physical gain control so you can set the level of the audio without an app. Pairing this with a video app like ProCam that has an audio meter gives you full control. Once you start getting great looking footage and audio from your phone, you'll be clamoring to take your shooting to the next level. And that means it's time to accessorize with lenses, lights, and stabilizers. Let's start with lenses. The lens on your smartphone is fixed. As we mentioned before, the zoom function on any app is merely enlarging your image artificially. Luckily for us, clever manufacturers have developed optical lenses that get placed over the existing lens to alter how much of a scene your camera sees without digitally manipulating the image. This will essentially allow you to get different looks from your phone that weren't previously a possibility. Here's our shot with the standard lens. And here's the same shot using the iPro fisheye lens. Notice how much more of the scene we're able to capture from the same location. If you want to add a kick of light to a scene that's a bit dark, you can mount a battery-powered LED light with the right setup like this clip light from Manfrotto. While keeping a shot static is preferable to shaky handheld footage, eventually you're going to want to introduce motion into your shots. To do this the right way, you'll need proper stabilizers to avoid going back to shaky town. If you're looking for something affordable, this Woxum Slingshot acts as a small tripod, gives handheld control, and has a 1/4-20 mount. This eye stabilizer dolly can give pretty impressive results when used on a flat surface. Let's take a look at an example. If you're looking for better follow shots, the Steadicam Smoothie is one of many options to get the job done. Let's see it in action. While smartphones are designed to make shooting easy, getting great footage takes a little bit of extra work. With proper framing, stable shots, and well-exposed, sharp footage, you truly do have a way of getting great video right in your pocket. So take that phone out and start shooting.